The first thing is, I want you to know that BSA, OFAC, Patriots Act, all that is a very serious subject. Did you know that not only can the credit union be fined, but you can be fined and you can actually spend up to 12 years in prison. And your personal fine can range anywhere from $55,000 up to $1 million. Especially what some of you might be involved in would be structuring. If a member comes in and he says, I've got $11,000 I want to deposit, and Madison says, no, don't give me $11,000 today, give me $6,000 today and give me $5,000 next week, or I'll have to fill out that doggone form on you. Well, if you do that, you're considered to be structuring, and you can pay fines and go to prison. And they do take it seriously. So be aware of that. First of all, I have a question. Who's your BSA officer?
Me.
And who is the backup BSA officer?
Paul.
Okay. All right. Want you to know that in addition to what we do, the board of directors and myself establish our policy. We have a risk assessment that we have to do every year as well. Item number 1 here, member identification program. Most of you know this, so I'll move pretty quickly. Please, if you have any questions, holler at me, okay? And if y'all in the branches have any questions, give us a call. Debbie or I'll be happy to answer your questions for you because we want you to feel comfortable with this. Before you open a new account, we have to gather certain kinds of information. One of them is we have to have a government-issued picture ID. Normally that's a driver's license, but it could be a passport or something like that. We also have to have a social security number. Before we can open an account, we have to have a physical address. If this is a new person that just moved to town and they're staying in the hotel, we want the address where they put their head on the pillow last night, okay? Once they move, they can change their address. I've seen a lot of that in convent and different new plants that have opened up.
So not the steel mills address.
Not the steel mills address. It has to have a physical address that they put their head on the pillow last night. That's correct. Not the steel mills address. You heard that, Lori? I'm just kidding. Yeah. We did a lot of that up in Hertford when we first started. I'm just picking at you, Lori. You'll get me back for that, I know. All right, let's see. If we cannot identify the person that wants to open the account, we will not open the account. Also, we have to have their real name. You know, in the South, we hear a lot of, I want to go by Bubba, I want to go by Hollywood, I want to go by TJ or RP or WK or whatever it is. That's fine, and there's a place where you can put the alias on their account so we can see it when they come in, but you have to have their legal full name to open the account. All right, we have to have their date of birth as well. Let's talk a little bit about enhanced due diligence. And this is where when somebody comes in to open an account, we're supposed to determine what they're opening the account for. Is this going to be a high-risk account, a low-risk account? And this is part of the process where if somebody wants to do a DBA, the only DBAs that we do, we'll talk about it later, are sole proprietorships that a member may open, like a grass cutting business or a hair cutting place or small trucking company, even things like that. But when we get involved in accounts like a DBA account, a person operating a business under their social security number, it's more risky, inherently so, because businesses run more risky business through and a lot more business through. Let's talk about this real quick. If we know that a member is going to be writing a non-member check and the non-member comes in to cash that check, we've had some arguments in the past. One of our members was building a house. He was going to pay his drywall guy $11,000. We knew about it a couple weeks ahead of time. He came in, we cashed the check, I got a copy of his driver's license and let him go. Well, the piece of the pie I was missing for the government was his social security number. So I called him up and I said, look, I made a mistake. I understand if you don't want to give it to me. He said, I don't want to give it to you. So we sent in our CTR report without the social, and of course we got our hands slapped for that. So if we do cash a check for a non-member, they are subject to the CTR information as well. We'll have to get their social, their driver's license, and things like that. Now, if they don't want to give it to us, we won't cash the check. Okay. Another phase of the BSA / OFAC is the actual OFAC itself. OFAC stands for Office of Foreign Assets Control. And this is basically list checking. I won't go a lot into this, but I get a list at least every 2 weeks of the new government's watch list. And I download it into our database and it checks itself to see if we have any terrorists out there. I've never found a real terrorist. I thought I did one time. I called them up. They said, no, this is not who we're looking for. Don't call us again. But usually it's somebody that lives on Iran Street or has Ayatollah in their city or some crazy something like that, and it kicks out. But when we check it out, I check the birthday, the address, the person's full name, social security number. If that doesn't match, I mark it false and go on with life. So I do a lot of that, so I'm not going to go into a lot of that. Currency transaction reports must be filed if a member brings in or takes out greater than $10,000 in a day. If it's $10,000 exactly, by law we don't have to do one. If it's $10,000 in a penny, we do have to fill out a currency transaction report. And Debbie and I fill those out, so I won't go into the details of that. However, like I said before, we have to have their social, we have to have their birthday, their address, all that good stuff.
If they're retired, you gotta put where they're retired from.
Right, the occupation, yeah. And that's something that
And
you and
what
I
they
get
did
more
there?
involved with.
And what they did there, not just retired from Bullcrest, or was that gonna be done?
No, no, I'm gonna report itself.
Well, the law really says you don't have to be that specific, but the examiners are requiring us to. So we'll have
Much
to, we'll have to
information
be
you can get from
specific,
person.
yeah.
So what do you want it off? On bank check?
No,
No,
Just
Let me
collect-
know.
just collect it.
we
Just
get
collect-
collected and we have to fill out a form. How many pages is that form? 6 pages or so?
something like that.
Something like that, it has to be completed. All right. Now, do you all know what I'm talking about when I say demand scanning for OFAC? If we cash a check for a non-member, we can go to demand scanning, punch in that person's name, and make sure that they're not on the OFAC list. Because if we cash a check for somebody on the OFAC list, we could be in trouble. Okay. So if it's a non-member, we even have to check that. If you have any questions, holler at us.
And FYI, if you're cutting a check to somebody, it also goes to that list, and if something hits, it'll stop you, if we're cutting a check.
That's
So,
true.
just so you'll know.
Okay, again, do not advise structuring. You can go to jail for that. It's very important. It's very serious, and the people do take it very serious, the federal and state examiners, especially the federal examiners. One thing to watch for too, let's say that we have an elderly member and they have a lot of money in their account, $100,000 or so. They never touched the money in 20 years. But all of a sudden you found out that their daughter got out of prison from being on drugs, who's come to live with her now. And she comes in with the elderly lady, and the elderly lady's real shaky and nervous, and the girl's saying, give me $2,000, give me $2,000. Well, we know something's up. What we would do in that case, of course, is we can fill out a SAR, but we can also call the elderly abuse hotline and let them know kind of what's going on. So keep an eye out for things like that. I've seen it once or twice over the years, and I do wish I had somebody to call. Well, now we do. It's called the Elder Abuse Hotline. Anti-money laundering, again, the government's looking for drug dealers, terrorists, people that's robbed a bank or something. Structuring is a major indicator of money laundering. If a member never has anything in their account, $5 never does anything, all of a sudden they're bringing $1,000 in today, $3,000 tomorrow, $1,500 next week, and they're just continuously doing this. We don't know where the money's coming from. I really don't need to confront them about it, but we can fill out a SAR, a suspicious activity report. All right, record keeping for wires, we only do those here in Florence, so we all that deal with wires know how to keep records of them, we know how to keep logs and all that kind of thing. As a general note, when thinking of identity theft, don't leave member files laying around or member account numbers laying around so anyone else who comes in can see. Keep it safe, keep all of our members safe, please. The Board of Directors and I update the risk assessment portion of our BSA anti-money laundering policy every year. And guess what? This past year, 4 of our locations have been included in high-intensity drug trafficking areas. And they are Florence, because of I-95. Lexington County, South Carolina. So Swansea is also included in the high drug trafficking area. Morgan County, Alabama, which includes Decatur, is in a high drug trafficking area. And also Shelby County, Tennessee, which includes our Memphis office, is in a high drug trafficking area. But even though they're in high drug trafficking areas, our position is that we're a closed field of membership. Only Nucor employees and their families can join the credit union, so we feel like it's pretty low risk. Most all of our offices are up inside Nucor facilities behind security. In addition, the state of New York, the whole state of New York is considered a high-intensity financial crime area. But again, we have a closed field of membership, and we just don't feel like we're that at risk, even though we list we list it as high on our policy because it's in the high intensity drug trafficking and financial crimes area. All right. One thing I want to talk about, we all know this, foreign items are trouble. If we get a Canadian check, they're trouble. They have to be handled specially. They have months, if not years, to return Canadian checks and things like that. Keep one thing in mind. If we don't want to take a check, we don't have to. I've had members come up front before and we'll say, where'd you get the money for this check? And they'll say, well, I have an internet job and I'm getting the money. And I said, do you have to wire somebody money back to someone? Well, yeah, well, we all know that's fraud. They'll say, well, you have to take this check. No, we don't. Give the check back to them and tell them to leave. We don't have to take any check that we don't want to. Keep that in mind. If they say it's none of our business, hand the check back to them. I've had them do that before too. And then they say, oh, what, you're not going to take it? I said, no, we don't have to take a check if we have reason to believe. Oh, okay, well, this is what I'm doing with it. I sold some wood that somebody's going to build a deck with it, blah, blah, blah. All right, for CTRs, we must have a quality control system in place. That means that typically Debbie's going to punch in the CTRs and she's going to give them to me and I'm going to review them and sign off on them. Suspicious activity reports. I want to talk a little bit more about those. That's something that we kind of got in trouble for when the federal examiners came in last time. They want to see us filing more of them. We're looking for money laundering schemes in excess of $5,000 if we know who the suspect is, and $25,000 or above if we don't know who it is. For example, counterfeit checks. Also, when the credit union detects fraud inside or outside, we must fill out a suspicious activity report. There are no dollar limits on this. We've had to do that before. Suspicious activity examples include loan fraud, kiting, structuring, counterfeit checks, insider activities, eBay scams like we experienced just the other day. Any intrusion into our computer system or data compromise would do the same thing. I just had something in my mind, I forgot what it was. But anyway, you know what suspicious activity is. Somebody brings you a bag full of money, say it's $8,000 and it's got red dye and you know that the bank down the street was robbed the other day. That's suspicious. Let us know so we can file a suspicious activity report. If you do feel like you want to file a suspicious activity report, if Nina knows that somebody is a drug dealer and they're paying somebody's car off and the money has white powder all over it, Nina's not going to tell everybody at the credit union. Keep it to yourself, and only the BSA officer and me should know because we're going to file the SAR. And when we file it, we're going to lock it up in the board cabinet where only Debbie and I have a key to that cabinet. Because if you blab about a SAR and say, if you tell somebody what's on it or what it's all about, you're not protected under the law. If you don't talk about it, you're fully protected under the law. You never have to go testify about it. If we ever receive a subpoena for information on a SAR, we'll call a FinCEN and they'll take care of us. We don't have to talk about it at all for obvious reasons. Some of the obvious reasons that you don't want to talk about a SAR is, first of all, you can be fined for talking about a SAR, a suspicious activity report. You can go to prison for 10 years. And it kind of goes without saying, the retaliation from the bad people can come down on you as well. So we don't talk about SARs once they're filed. I have a question for you. If you have to fill out a suspicious activity report on the manager of the credit union, who do you tell about it?
The board.
The board chair, right. Should be one individual, the chairman of the board of directors, whoever that is. Who is our board chairman right now? Star, right. All right, training has to take place at least once a year. You're being trained tonight. We trained the supervisory committee last night, Jeff and I did, and then next week I'll train the board of directors as well. Keep everything for 5 years. We have the notice posted. We talked a little bit about DBAs already, but basically the only kind of doing business as accounts that we have are sole proprietorships, which use the Social Security number as the taxpayer identification number. Keep this in mind. If a member comes in and wants to do this kind of thing, we do not allow money services business. If they want to open up a business and you ask them what they do and they say, oh, we're going to cash check or sell money orders, traveler's checks, no. That's considered a money services business. It's very risky. It's people turning over money for other instruments, basically to launder money is what they're doing. So we do not allow any money services businesses whatsoever. You're probably all more familiar with the business account opening procedures than you want to be. You have a sheet in your handout about that. And also for this business account due diligence questionnaire, some of the businesses that we've already had on the books, we could fill in, their average deposits, average withdrawals, and that kind of thing. But if it's a new, probably most of them all are going to be new business accounts. Just have them fill out this form if they need some help with it. It's just general information. We want to know currency deposits, for example. If you're going to have 2 a month for $1,000 fees, that's fine. If you're going to have 25 a month for $10,000 apiece, you need to know about it for obvious reasons. Are they going to be doing a lot of ACHs or wire transfers or anything like that? And then, of course, they have to sign it at the end. Do y'all have any questions about BSA, OFAC, anti-money laundering, Patriots Act, anything like that? Have you all signed the sheet? Okay, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Enjoy it. And thank you, branches, for watching as well. Let us know if you have any questions.